Okay, looks like we are live, guys, for the much anticipated debate between the Canadian atheist, Michael, and Praise IAM. So we've got two seasoned debaters today who are going to be debating the topic of secular morality and Christian morality, and I am pumped. This is going to be a lot of fun, okay? So everybody to the audience, looks like we've got a great chat already. Please, before I introduce the debaters for this afternoon, make sure you're tagging me with your questions at Standing for Truth, because we will be having an audience Q&A. So before we go over the format and get into our opening statements, why don't we kind of break the ice? Let's give the debaters a minute for brief introductions as to who they are and what we can expect to find over at their channels or podcasts. Why don't we start with Michael? Thanks again for being here. Thanks for giving us your time.
Stanley, thanks so much for having me back. Yeah, I'm Michael. I do a little bitty podcast with my friend Dean called The Canadian Atheist. You can find it on iTunes and other little podcatchers. And we like talking to, you're stealing from my opening here. Thanks so much for that. We like to talk to believers, have conversations and things like that.
Awesome. Well, you've had some great shows and some great talks, Michael. I've seen quite a few of them. So I definitely recommend your podcast to any critical thinking person out there. So please check out Michael's podcast. And Praise IAM. Once again, thanks for being here. Thanks for giving us your time. A little bit about yourself and what's going on over at your channels.
Appreciate SOT. This is an absolute privilege to have a discussion with Michael and on this topic. I'm really excited. But my channel is focused on apologetics, means defending the faith and certain things that come against Christianity, like maybe scientific things, but mostly hermeneutical issues like the Old Testament. Maybe there's some things in the Old Testament that atheists have problems with. I mostly do like slavery, some other things, but yeah, I'm excited for this discussion and ready to go.
All right. Well, I appreciate it from the both of you, Praise IAM and Michael. This is definitely going to be an exciting debate. Format for this afternoon is going to be pretty easygoing. We're going to have 10-minute opening statements followed by a cordial, as equally timed as possible conversation. Both these men, like I said, are seasoned debaters. They're both respectful, so I'm sure it'll be easy to moderate. But that being said, why don't we jump right into the opening statements? Michael agreed that he doesn't mind starting. So, Michael, why don't I hand the floor over to you, and you've got 10 minutes whenever you're ready.
Awesome. So now just repeat everything I just said a second ago.
I apologize.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks so much for having me back. It's a pleasure to be here. My fellow Canuck. I don't get to say that very much on YouTube. Yeah. Skip the next little part about I have a little podcast because I just said that. So our discussion today is secular versus Christian morality. And to be clear, secular, not atheist. Atheism is an answer to a single question and in no way speaks to morality. Does a god or gods exist? Everything else is something else. Atheism is wholly descriptive. Christianity, on the other hand, is both descriptive and prescriptive. Christopher Hitchens once said, "I'm an atheist. You can't tell anything else about me. You know nothing about my politics or whether I'm kind to my children." End quote. You can be a moral atheist and an immoral one. And you can be a moral Christian and certainly an immoral one. My stance is secular morality is not only vastly superior to theistic morality, but that theistic morality, and specifically Christian, since that's the take of my friend here, is immoral. As a point of clarification, I'm not saying praise is immoral. I'm saying his foundation is. I say this because Christians believe the Bible and follow the Bible. They typically vote based on biblical principles. They lobby to see laws passed that are in line with their views and biblical views, marginalizing segments of the population that they see as either not right or disagreeable or sinful. The LGBT community is a clear example of this. We are told that the God of the Bible is not only the foundation of morality, but that all morality comes from him. There can be nothing more arbitrary than this. As or the standard, we have to look at this God. It has been argued to me in the past, and I don't want to shoulder praise with things that other people have said, but I do suspect, even if nowhere else but in the side chat, people will comment things like, all he's doing is pointing out things saying, I don't like that. And this is, of course, not the case. So what is morality? The Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy defines it as this: descriptively to refer to a certain codes of conduct put forward by a society or group of people, such as a religion, or accepted by an individual for his or her own behavior, or normatively to refer to a code of conduct that, given specific conditions, would be put forward by all rational people. If you're going to try to build a framework for this, you need to start with a solid foundation. A commonly used standard cited by secularists is well-being. This is a standard that I use as well. If we look at the term objective, and this is commonly brought up by the faithful, I hear this a lot. I'll talk about my morality and say, what's your objective standard? Now, the meaning of objective is something not influenced by personal feelings or opinions, considering and representing facts. So we can apply the standard of well-being to this and declare it simply and honestly to be an objective standard. Well, where does morality come from? To the best of our knowledge, this is an emergent property of societal evolution. This is clear to see through the ebbs and flows of how morality has changed over time. Once upon a time, not that long ago, slavery was a completely acceptable practice. We now see it as abhorrent. Corporal punishment was much widely accepted as a way to keep kids in line, teach them lessons, or discipline them. We now know that this does far more harm than good. I'm a moral realist. I do believe that moral facts exist. To quote Matt Slick, it is always wrong to torture a baby merely for one's own personal pleasure. End quote. I am not an absolutist in this way, and I do believe that some morals are subjective. Lying would be one of those. If I accept Praise's claim that his God exists, and I think for the purposes of this discussion, I kind of have to, and I say that because I don't want to get stuck right at the beginning stating that his God doesn't even exist. I mean, of course it doesn't, but that's a different discussion. So all we're left to do is look at the evidence, which in this case is the Bible, and judge this God accordingly. And yeah, I said judge. We can totally judge God. Not because we're angry. I'm not angry with the God of the Bible. I think his followers do some pretty heinous things. Not out of hate. I don't hate the God of the Bible any more than I hate Thanos or Galactus. Geeks will get me there. Not judging because we hate our sin. Sin is made up. But instead based on actions and in some cases inactions. After all, Ephesians 1:11 says, and this is paraphrased, everything is done for his purpose. Are his actions in line with well-being? Well, not according to 2 Chronicles 7, where he stops the rain and sends locusts and plagues to the people. In Revelation 15, apparently 7 angels will bring 7 plagues. Not in Leviticus 26, where if you piss him off long enough, he's just going to continue striking you 7-fold for your sins. Not in Luke 21, where he says the signs will be pestilences, earthquakes, and famine. The list goes on. Does he avoid imposing his will on others? Well, not in Exodus 7, where he hardens Pharaoh's heart, nor in Romans 9, where it is declared that he has mercy on those he desires and hardens those he desires. Let's look at the flood for a second. Let's just put aside humans for just one moment. What did all of the other animals do that was wrong? This God knew what was going to happen when he was having them all walk by Adam and Adam naming them all, and just to later etch-a-sketch them out of existence. What about the 10 Commandments? Not going to go into that now. Just did that. Go look at Standing's recent uploads for my discussion with CJ Cox. What about slavery? That's a common one. Exodus 21, Leviticus 25, 44 through 46. I'm not going to go into detail with that either. Dr. Josh Bowen's got a great book called Did the Old Testament Endorse Slavery? Well, the short answer is yeah. But read the book anyway. What about Abraham and Isaac? That story from Genesis 22. Can you imagine the PTSD for both father and son, given that story? What about all the burnt offerings for a sweet aroma to God? Not food, just burnt up animals. Leviticus 1 and 11, Ephesians 5, Exodus 29, and more. What about the prophet Elisha from 2 Kings? So this is a funny one. So a prophet of God gets butthurt, and so God sends 42 bears, and I think the Bible says she-bears, to tear up kids. I actually once had it argued to me that it wasn't kids, but it was a gang. And I still honestly, I laugh when I think about how silly that statement is. What about Jephthah from Judges 11? This God knew exactly who, with perfect foreknowledge, the first person that was going to greet him when he came home. But no mulligans here, I guess. What about King David and his baby from 2 Samuel? David cheats, and God afflicts his kid and causes him to suffer with sickness and die after a week. This is weird because in Ezekiel 18, it says God will not punish the son for the sins of the father. It's also weird when you consider Deuteronomy 5 says that he'll punish for generations. I'll let Christians deal with that contradiction. What about Jesus? Matthew 10:34. Didn't come to bring peace. Some versions say sword, some say division. What about Luke 14:26, where he says you can't be my disciple unless you hate people, hate your life, all these other things. Well, that's loving. What about Matthew 15, where he doesn't want to heal a Jewish woman and calls her a dog? That's kind. What about people who don't believe, like me? He could annihilate me. He could forgive me, but no. He'll choose instead to have me suffer for all eternity for these finite crimes. And the worst of all is blasphemy. The only way to ensure you burn forever. After all, the Bible says all sins will be forgiven except blasphemy, according to Mark 3:29. You hurt his feelings, you're done. This God is the only being who has watched and in fact knew ahead of time with 100% perfect foreknowledge every vile, violent act anyone and everyone would ever do. And he watched it happen. Something I, and not one person watching this stream, would ever do. If we had the ability to stop it, we would. Any Christian watching this, if you had the capacity to stop the cold-blooded murder of George Floyd, you would have done it. Consider what you've heard. Consider the absolute arbitrariness of this God. He's the root. He decides. Why? Because. We see nothing more than big stick, might is right, I'm God, so watch your step, morality. To quote Christopher Hitchens again, from a moral perspective, religion has ordinary people do what in its absence no one would ever contemplate. I'm not going to take up any more time, but really all we need to do is read the Bible. The book for which we're agreeing for the purposes of the discussion is true, and see that the God represented there is completely immoral, worthy only of our condemnation and disdain. Thank you.
Perfect timing. I appreciate that, Michael. And that being said, we are now going to hand it over to Praise. We've already got a ton of questions coming in from the audience. That being said, most are for you, Michael, at this point. So as I said before, thanks for being a good sport.
If I may broach something really quick, since there was a lot mentioned there, do you think we could have just a short rebuttal period? Because I think just trying to unpack all of that in an open discussion would just get too hectic. You know what I'm saying? Like just a short rebuttal period.
You can have all the time to address what I said you want.
Oh, okay. Wonderful.
Okay, well, that being said, then maybe what we'll do is, Praise, you'll have your opening. And then to be as fair as possible, we'll hand it to Michael to take, let's say, between 3 and 5 minutes for an uninterrupted rebuttal. And then we'll do the same for Praise. And then we'll go into an open discussion. Gentlemen, would that work out okay?
Perfect.
Sounds totally cool. Yeah,
right.
That's totally fine. Yeah.
Well, thanks for being easy going, boys, and let's jump right into it then. Praise, you've got 10 minutes, and if you need to screen share, let me know, and I can put your slides up.
Let's see here. Make sure we get this on the right foot this time. The last time was a nightmare. Okay. You guys see that?
Yes.
Awesome. All right, let me get there. So I'll tell you when to start the timer, SOT. Start it now. Christian morality versus secular morality. Ontology morality eliminates natural moral frameworks. The problem of moral supervenience is a defeater for all moral theories because duplicate worlds that are alike in all natural respects must be also alike in all moral respects. Therefore, in a world where causing harm to others, violating people's autonomy, committing atrocities, etc., would thus be a moral fact and be paradoxical. Morals have non-natural properties such as sui generis because they are causally impotent and non-discoverable by empirical or scientific methods. They are non-reductive and have irreducible normative properties. This predicament was popularized by David Hume, which now is referred to as Hume's guillotine in philosophy. Can someone get a cup of morals? Or can someone dissect a frog and find some morality? The normativity objection motivates the thesis that moral and natural facts are just too different to be identical. Not only is moral language unique, so are two the facts that would make moral claims true. The normativity objection is one offspring of the open question argument. We have good reason to believe that moral and natural facts are in different, distinct categories. Moral facts are about what matters, what is the physical structure of the universe. What we have is reason to believe what obligations we have, whereas natural facts involve causal principles that govern matter, and I'll repeat that again, physical structure of the universe. As Derek Parfit suggests, rivers could not be sonnets, experiences cannot be stones, and justice could not, injustice could not be stones. We could not defend these claims by saying that we were not intended to be analytic or conceptual truths. Others could rightly reply, given the meaning of these claims, they could possibly be true. This, I believe, is the way in which much less obvious is normative naturalism, because it could not be true. Natural facts could be normative in the reason implying sense, and this is page 324 from Derek Parfit. Christian virtue ethics reign supreme. Virtue ethics is more holistic in its view of the moral agent than the other theories. The other two theories are atomistic in nature. They take on individual action and hope that a continued series of right actions will lead to a right and moral end in life. Both categories focus on conforming to external rules, but they often miss out on the bigger picture of the overall trajectory of one's life's choices. This is Noel Stewart, 2009. The ultimate end telos of purpose of life is just as important as the individual moments that make up our lives. Utilitarianism suggests that the happiness of the world is the ultimate goal of morality. Deontology claims that doing one's moral duty according to the given rule is the most important thing in moral decision-making. Christianity virtue ethics says that emulating Christ and hereby bringing God glory through our sanctification is the chief goal, telos in the Greek, of every Christian. Hence, virtue ethics demands teleology, which no secular worldview can account for due to an absence of the imago Dei and objective purpose. Aristotle so eloquently articulated that virtue ethics is predicated on temperance, which means there are moral restraints that one ought to have, such as chastity, modesty, humility, self-regulation, hospitality, decorum, abstinence, forgiveness, mercy. Each of these involves restraining an excess of some impulse, such as sexual desire, vanity, or even anger. Without the triune biblical God, there cannot be a universal prescription for one to adopt moral restraints, temperance, because biology, physics, and chemistry can only tell us what is, not what ought to be. This is commonly known as David Hume's is-ought problem, which no philosopher has ever solved. Now, the epistemic conditions of moral responsibility requires free will. Philosophers usually acknowledge two individually necessary and generally sufficient conditions for a person to be morally responsible for an action, i.e. susceptible to be praised or blamed for it. A control condition, also called a freedom condition, an epistemic condition, also called knowledge, cognitive, or mental condition. This first condition has to do with whether the agent possesses an adequate degree of control or autonomy in performing the action, whereas the second condition is concerned with whether the agent's epistemic or cognitive state was such that she or he can properly be held accountable for that action and its consequences. This is Fisher and Revisit 12-3. As Joshua Shepard lays out in his paper, Consciousness, Free Will, Moral Responsibility, taking the folk seriously, free will and moral responsibility are central features of consciousness. It is true theists can be secular and subscribe to free will, moral responsibility, but it cannot be true for non-theists to subscribe to free will, moral responsibility. Consequently, secular moral standards are incompetent because they cannot morally condemn or praise someone. And the majority of philosophers hold to moral realism, which assumes free will agents. This study was produced by Bourget and Chalmers in 2014. And the last part, secular morality is futile, quotes from secularists themselves. In a universe of electrons and selfish genes, blind physical forces, and genetic replication, some people are going to get hurt. Other people are going to get lucky. If you don't find any rhyme or reason in it, nor any justice, the universe we observe has precisely the properties we should expect if there is at bottom no design, no purpose, no evil, no good, nothing but pitiless indifference. This is quoted by Richard Dawkins, The River of Eden, A Darwinian Life of You. Quote, is in an important sense, ethics as we understand it is an illusion fobbed off on us by our genes to get us to cooperate. Ethical codes work because they drive us to go against our selfish day-to-day impulses in favor of long-term group survival and harmony. Furthermore, the way our biology forces our ends is by making us think that there is an objective higher code to which we all are subject. Ethics is a shared illusion of the human race. This is Michael Ruse. He is an agnostic or even atheist in Edward Williams' Evolution and Ethics, a New Scientist, page 51 through 52. If God does not exist, everything is permitted. Fyodor Dostoevsky, the Grand Inquisitor. I'm going to push Michael on that a little bit when we get our open discussion. If there is no single moral authority, example, if there is no God, then we have to, in some sense, create values for ourselves. That means that moral claims are not true or false in the same way as factual claims are. Moral claims are judgment. That is, it is always possible for someone to disagree with without saying something that is factually false. You may disagree with me, but you cannot say I have made a factual error. This is Julian Baggini, 2003. He's an atheist, secularist. Atheism, a very short introduction, page 41 through 51. And there I'm going to yield and looking forward to the rebuttal period.
All right. Praise with a few minutes to spare as well. So let me stop the timer. And what we'll do here is hand it over to Michael. Michael, I'm going to give you 5 minutes. Of course, you don't have to take the full 5 minutes. Just know you've got 5 minutes of uninterrupted rebuttal. And then we'll do the same for praise. And then we'll go into a discussion on the topic. So go ahead, Michael.
Cool. Yeah. I just need to unscramble my brains. That was a lot of info in a short period of time. I'll do my best to address a few of the points, and I think, like you, Praise, I look forward to the discussion. My responses will be in no specific way. One of the things you said was, if God doesn't exist, everything is permitted. You also talked about teleology, which is like, purpose driven, purpose served. I'm going to address these kind of all at once, but I want to bring up the points that you made. You talked about what good reasons we have to believe in different categories of morals. You talked about virtue ethics, and you talked about moral restraint from a Christian perspective, and you also mentioned Richard Dawkins. I'll address him first, I guess. Richard Dawkins is a biologist. I wouldn't go to him if I was looking for anything in depth in philosophy. I don't mean to sound out just kind of like a toss-off answer, but when he's talking about biological evolution, I think he's got a good handle on that. The same as if I was to reference Lawrence Krauss with something with cosmology. I wouldn't talk to Lawrence Krauss about something history related, and I wouldn't talk to Richard Dawkins about something philosophy related. It's almost like a reverse appeal to authority, where you're suggesting that I'm going to appeal to someone who's got no expertise in the field. Everything else you said can be perfectly well addressed with what I said was my foundation, which is well-being. In issues when it comes to exercising moral restraint, in issues when it comes to whether God doesn't exist, anything's permitted. If we apply the standard of well-being with the definitions that I used, I can answer every single one of those, no God required. Thanks.
All right, perfect. I appreciate that, Michael. Let's now hand it over to Praise. And before I do, though, we've got a good chat, good lively chat. Everyone's tagging me with their questions. I've already got a ton. So,
is my friend John in there?
No, unfortunately not yet. I'll have to let him know. Ask him where he is, because his best buddy Michael's here. That's awesome. So let's hand it over to Praise. Praise, you've got 5 minutes of uninterrupted rebuttal. Then we're going to jump into an open discussion. Praise, the floor is yours.
Awesome. So first I want to get started because Michael said that secular doesn't mean atheism, but then he goes on to say, well, the secular versus theistic. So what's it? I mean, if it's secular versus theistic, that's the same thing as saying or atheist versus theistic. So I wonder if maybe he made if that's it's a contradictory statement. Maybe we can unpack that a little bit too. And also he claimed that there's moral facts. Well, there's a problem called moral non-cognitivism in philosophy, that there are no moral truthities or falsities. And I would like to see how would he ground moral truths in what? And then he talks about emergent property is morality is emergent property. Well, I went into my opening and see that it's the problem of moral supervenience, and that's one thing that shows it cannot be emergent, and also the normative problem as well that I mentioned in my opening, that it destroys the idea that any natural property can give rise to some type of morality. See, morality is a whole different category. It's a category fallacy to correlate morality with nature. And again, I'll just repeat this: it's the problem of moral supervenience and also the normative problem. I mean, the normativity objection. I'm sorry, but also then he goes into. He says that it's good for the best is well-being. Well, this is called utilitarianism. And utilitarianism, you can pick holes to it all day. One of them is a trolley problem, and maybe he can, if that's true, then if morality is reduced to well-being, then how do you address the trolley problem? And he goes that you can put God on trial. That's ridiculous, because you need to assume God to put him on trial, because God is objective. I like to show, if Michael has arguments that show God is not objective, let's see that. And I would just throw ontology up, and I don't think he could address that. And also he's talking about some things in the Old Testament that they seem harsh. Well, does he know it's a theocracy back then? That people are more accountable than they are today, because today we're in grace. We don't see God. We don't experience God in face to face. It's a real experience. They were more accountable back then because they seen him, they experienced, they knew he existed. Therefore, there's really no room for any type of grace we call, or any type of graciousness, or so grace is only when you don't see something. That means that God can apply grace. So we are in the best time, I believe, because that we are afforded more grace. So to me, that's just an argument from emotion. Animals more. So he says something about the Old Testament with animals. Well, what's the difference today? And I mean, lions kill they kill deers. They kill all sorts of animals. Predators do. That's their thing. So T-Jump actually says that's immoral for a lion to kill a deer. I'd like to see if Michael believes that is immoral as well. If that is, then why would you object to that in the first place? And also he brought up slavery in Leviticus 25, and I addressed, and I have never heard Joshua Bowen respond to this sufficiently. And if you read Leviticus 25, 45 through 47, it's talking about the gers and also the toshobs. The toshab in verse 46, it says you can keep a toshab for the rest of your generations, and you can hand them down. But what's interesting, in verse 47, it says a toshab can wax rich. So if a toshab can wax rich and then even be ahead of other Israelites, they were actually masters of Israelites. So there's no way there's any slavery there. And the problem of evil, so God stopping sin, that's called free will. if God stopped every person's act of some type of immorality, there would be no reality. He would it would be an imposition on everyone's free will, and that would negate the purpose of reality in the first place. So where's the demarcation where God is supposed to not have to intervene and to intervene? I'll just end it there. I concede there.
Okay, I appreciate that with 20 seconds to spare. So I thank you both for being on time in your openings and rebuttals. So that being said, let's move into an open dialogue as we always do. We'll keep it cordial and, of course, as equally timed as possible. I want both debaters, Michael and Praise, to feel like they're getting plenty of time to make their points and address each other's objections. So to be fair, Praise just ended with his rebuttal. I'm going to hand it over to Michael, and I will allow him to start the discussion. So, gentlemen, the floor is yours. And Michael, whenever you're ready, go ahead. Oh, Michael, you're on mute.
Better?
You're good.
Yep.
Yay. Thanks again. So this is, I'm looking forward to this. Okay. So you mentioned a bunch of stuff. Well, one of the things I maybe talk about first, it should be fairly quick, is the issue around free will, and God can't interfere with free will and stuff like that. I'm curious, do you think there will be free will in heaven?
Absolutely.
Will there be evil in heaven?
No.
So God could create a place where there's no evil and we still have free will.
Yes.
Okay.
And I'd like to maybe elucidate a little bit more. So the reason why that we can retain free will and not be evil is, well, 95% of the sins that we have right now will not be applicable in the heavenly realm, because most of the sins that we go through are carnal sins like murder, rape. The only ones that are left are things like lying, like should not lie. If you tell like a neighbor in heaven, if you lie. But again, we're under the atonement of Jesus Christ. So even if we did, we would have forgiveness. But I think we would also find out there's no reason to lie in heaven because we know the truth. I think the only reason why people lie in the first place is because they don't know the truth or they're afraid of the truth. So I think a lot of those things will resolve themselves in that particular moment in our existence.
So you've never told like little white lies to protect somebody?
Yeah, I mean, of course, but I'm saying those things will work itself out in heaven. Like it.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine. Yeah, I'm not looking for. I think
okay.
Just for everyone, like I'm not looking for gotcha moments, people. I'm genuinely interested in just having the conversation.
Yeah, me too.
So okay, so that was me. So you throw something at me now.
So maybe you can address the supervenience problem and the normativity objection. That so morality is a different category. Like, can I have a cup of morality, or can you throw on the grill some morality and put on some buns? Like, morality is in no way in any way physical, and I think the supervenience objection kind of demonstrates that. Would you like to address that?
Do you think morality is tangible?
What do you mean by? Can you unpack that a little bit? What do you mean by tangible?
So if you see someone do something. We judge people all the time, right? You see someone do something. Maybe you see someone, I don't know, do something. Pick a thing that you would, say is immoral, and you see two people on the street, and you see them do that. And we judge people all the time. We judge people for the clothes they wear, let alone anything they may do. So morality is tangible in that you can see something and identify. Say, yeah, man, that wasn't a good thing. That's what I mean by tangible. Like we can identify, we can see things that are moral and things that are immoral.
Yes, and the problem is it empirical? Is it so? I guess would it be like your human senses that detect that? I would say no. I think it would be more of an internal thing that detects that. Even though that they probably work hand in hand too. I don't think they're divorced. I don't think one precludes the other. I think that your empirical senses and then the internal you that God created also recognizes something would be right or wrong.
Well, we have to interpret the world. The only way we interpret the world is through our senses. So whether we see something, hear something, feel something, that if you're experiencing the world through something other than your senses, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Well,
So
again, that's the is-odd problem by David Hume. Yes, we can get descriptive things in reality, but we cannot get the odds, the ontology of morality, the nature of morality, the being.
Well, sure,
What is the nature and being of morality? Go ahead.
Yeah, we actually can. Like I said, if we apply well-being, so if we see someone abuse someone on the street, right? One person just physically abuses someone else. We can apply the standard of well-being to that, and then we can judge that action was immoral because it negatively impacted the well-being of that other person. So even though we can't, like you said, I'm not sure where you got it or whether you thought of it yourself, like a cup of morality, can we put some on the grill and have that for dinner? No, I get that. But like I stated before, we can see and identify things that are moral and immoral. And we can also address them from a severity perspective. You brought up the trolley problem, and this is something that's interesting because the trolley problem, it's a horrible situation, right? It's bad.
Yeah.
Who wants to be put in the situation where they have to make that kind of decision? And so we have to. It's not. The reality is, it's not black and white. We can't just say, well, it is moral to flip the switch to have the trolley divert and run over the one person, versus it is moral to flip the switch and have it run over the 5 people. It's a sticky, dirty situation, and you were right in what you said, in that it's not easy to address. I don't think it's easy for anyone to address. So I think what we have to do is we have to look at well-being and where we can do the most well-being. So in a situation like that, when I'm faced with a trolley problem, it really sucks. Like, it sucks a lot. But I would feel it necessary to throw the switch and have the one person die. And then I would bawl my face off and probably not sleep for a week.
Well,
how would you address the trolley problem?
Well, I would address this through virtue ethic, Christian virtue ethics. The way Jesus expects, the way virtue ethics is expressed, is that you would jump in the road for them all, even the one person, or even the other 4 of the group of people that are on the other side of the track. So it's like, it's supererogatory type of nature, that it goes beyond obligation. So I would say that, and that's why virtue ethics, I believe, is superior to deontology or utilitarianism.
So I think that's a little slippery, because if you look at the way the trolley problem's laid out, that's not given as an option. Right? The trolley problem is you must do one or the other. If you presented me with that same situation, I would hope that I would have the intestinal fortitude to sacrifice myself as well. But traditionally, and I think you know this, traditionally the trolley problem doesn't give you that option. And what's interesting is when you talk about virtue ethics, when we talk about virtue, I mean, it's virtue. My understanding of it depends how you want to define it, but it's a quality that is deemed as good. Would you agree with that?
I would slightly differ. I would say what we ought to be, and see, we would be the human race. We ought to be like Jesus Christ, and I think that is inherent in all people. But they can mar it, they can deprave their conscience and things like that. So I slightly disagree with that.
Okay, then it seems like is that your own definition? Because I'm not aware, but maybe anybody in the side chat or someone can look this up, but I think you'd have a hard time finding that definition of virtue ethics in anything academic. And if it's your definition, cool. Like, if that's how you choose to define it, cool. But it almost seems like then what you're doing is adding to it and saying, well, virtue ethics are these things, and my definition of virtue ethics, and then you're adding this thing to it, where traditionally virtue ethics is a quality deemed as good. My next question was going to be, deemed good by whom? I would assume you would just say God.
Yes, this is actually academic. It was a paper put out by Nikki Coffey Towsley, University of Dayton, and also Brad Kallenberg. So it is academic, but that's the whole point, that it's virtue ethics surrounds an objective ontology. So we can compare objective ontologies and compare them, but we know evolution cannot be it, or physics, or chemistry. And I think David Hume made that clear with the is-ought problem, but also the supervenience problem. Maybe we can go into that a little bit too, but I think Jesus Christ is I would say the best abductive argument or best abductive explanation for the ontology required, the ought for virtue ethics.
Well, that begs the question that he is who the Bible purports him to be, right? Because like an abductive argument is coming to the best conclusion based on the available evidence, and you would have to presuppose that the Bible is true, which I'm for the sake of this discussion, I told you I was prepared to do. But you have to presuppose that, like, what was it? Yeshua ben Ananias or Yeshua ben Joseph or any of the 100,000 other Josephs that were like, it's like being named Bob, today in the United States. The name was all over the place in the first century. So, we have to presuppose that this person is who he said he was, and that the divinity is also true in order to come to that. You also mentioned something about how we can't arrive there through evolution or physics or science or things like that. And I'm not sure that I agree or disagree when it comes to those specific things. But one of the things within evolution is also sociological evolution. And like I said before, I think you can develop that from a sociological perspective. And I think that that's evidently true, given the examples that I gave in my opening. And that is that once upon a time, we knew things. We just knew things were okay. Slavery was totally cool, man. Like it was cool. And then it wasn't so much anymore. And then, the issue I gave about, corporal punishment for children. Well, we know now there's just mountains upon mountains of evidence that shows all the negative side effects that far outweigh the slap on the ass that you give your kid. It's, how it demeans them and it degrades them and all these other things, how overall it doesn't work.
Right. So I'm going to press back and I'm going to challenge you. And I would say that we have a paper called There's No Objective Progress Without a Non-Natural Ontology. There's a paper that was put out there by Jerome Daniel Schoon. It's actually a peer-reviewed paper. And he lays out the local problem, the problem of speciesism and the problem of evolutionary ethics, why that the for example, like you mentioned slavery, that the objective moral progress has been explicitly stated, like that's been accepted as moral progress, the ending of slavery or the abolishment of slavery. Sure. But here's the thing: you need a non-natural objective, a non-natural objective ontology to address that. So I think Jerome Daniel Schoon did a good job showing that. Could you address the local problem, the speciesism and the evolutionary ethics? Like those are known problems. Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
So what I can't do is address a paper I'm hearing about for the first time now. But what I can do is say it's a claim that so the claim is we can't have an objective standard without a non-physical standard.
Correct.
Right. So I'm not trying to dodge it. I'm trying to answer with an example in the form of a question. Can you please give me an example of a moral question that cannot be addressed if we use well-being as a standard?
Well, that's the thing. I think that well-being is a hallmark of the moral standard that I propose today, which is Christian virtue ethics. I think that's part of it. Well-being, that you love your neighbor to the fact that you would even die for them. That's like a supererogatory type of standard that Jesus holds us to. Oh yeah, I want to address that too. Jesus ben Ananias and these other Jesuses. Well, I mean, those historians have actually negated those as, I mean, if you're going to try to invoke some type of other false Jesus, but I think the best way to go about this is just the Jesus of the gospel. and we have so many. We have like 5,000 manuscripts or something like that show that the Jesus of the gospel was divine. You can even say he was deity. So that's the Jesus that I would say that is responsible for these morals. But
Right.
go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry. And I'm sorry if I cut you off there.
No, it's fine.
So, a little bit jumping around. Okay. So yeah, I understand what you mean when you talk about the other Jesus and stuff like that. And I'm fine with, for the purposes of the discussion, sticking to the Jesus of the Bible. That's fine. The one quick note about the 5,000 or so manuscripts, we have virtually, and there's a lot of peer reviewed stuff on this. I won't cite the papers, one, because I don't know them off the top of my head, but they're readily available. We have virtually none that are before 300 AD. So yeah, we have like, I've heard some people say there were 25,000 manuscripts. Yeah, but those are from the 6th, 7th, 8th century. But we don't have any dating for, like before 300 CE. So, but that's neither here nor there. Let's just stick to if we want to stick to what's in the Bible, it's totally cool. So it's okay. One of the examples that I gave, the woman, from Matthew 15, the woman who goes to Jesus looking to be healed. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So you took to love the Lord your God with all your heart and love your neighbor as yourself. Cool. There's a clear example of how Jesus was not doing that in Matthew 15. Should I, why should
go
I
into that? Yeah. Are you talking about the,
he was clearly not addressing her. This is the Son of God who had the capacity to just make her well, just like that. No sweat off his back whatsoever. And instead doesn't want to heal her and calls her a dog. That is a specific example, taking the Jesus from the Bible, of him not addressing her well-being. And if we use well-being as a standard, if she needed to be healed, and he could have like that with no problem, and he didn't do it. And you would have. If you had that power, you would have done it.
Right. So I'm going to have to look into that account, because I didn't even know that the woman even was requesting to be healed. I have to look into that. But if the word dog, it's a lot of biblical contrarians, they like to say, well, this means that it's racist because these are the Gentiles. But actually, if you look into the word dog, it means ungodly. In Peter, it's been used, dogs, fornicators, Revelation. So it's not like talking about a race. It's just talking about ungodly people that are reprobate, depraved people that commit atrocities and that are basically totalitarian in their scheme of morality. So,
sure, okay, but still, this is the Prince of Peace, right? So if you look at 1 John 4 says God is love, right?
Yeah. Yep.
1 Corinthians 13, the biblical definition of love being kindness. Things like that, kindness, patience, like not, I forget some of the wording, but you get the idea, right?
Yeah.
He's not employing any of those things when he does this. And again, this is the dude who could just like that, done.
Right. So I like to address.
He didn't have any problem attaching what's his name, the Roman soldier's ear back to his head in the Garden of Gethsemane.
So whenever Jesus does something, he has a ethical purpose for that. So maybe he had to heal that person's faith rather than the physical ailment they had, or whatever the problem was. So there could have been a moral reason for that, or for something that had a better purpose. So I don't necessarily think it wasn't like where Jesus didn't want to, but maybe he did it for a better purpose. But I will say this: Jesus said, "Love your enemies." That was explicitly stated in Matthew 5 and Luke 6.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's cool. Which is, but so I think, and again, sorry, I cut you off again. I apologize.
That's fine.
So, but you have to, I think, in order to get there, in order to square that circle, like you just said, maybe he had this other reason. You can't get there without adding to the text. Coulda, woulda, shoulda, maybe, but you're adding to the text, right? Like, because that's not explicit within there.
Well, Jesus
You could
did.
still
Go
be
ahead.
right. You could still be right, but you're adding to the text.
Right, but he's done it before. Like, he wanted to heal Chorizo. It was Sidon Chorizo or something like along those lines. Or Capernaum, that's right, Capernaum and Chorizo. Or something like that. Those Greek words get a lot of tricky for me. But he says he would have liked to heal those towns, but their unbelief that he couldn't do because their unbelief. So there might have been an unbelief problem. I don't know. But see, Jesus doesn't do might equals right. But see, if might was right, then he would have just did it regardless and just healed everyone. And even if they were enemies of his or didn't have faith, then he would have did it. So I think it could work both ways, that might doesn't equal right. I agree. Jesus is not a God that believes that might equals right. That's against his nature, because free will creatures that he likes to intervene with.
Okay. Did you want to ask me something else? I feel like I kind of took over there a little bit. So
Oh,
why don't you throw
no.
something else at me?
Yeah, I'm enjoying this discussion. So the problem of supervenience. So if you have two duplicate worlds that are alike in all natural respects, also must be alike in all moral respects. So if you have a world causing harm to others, violating people's autonomy, committing atrocities, well, that would be paradoxical, because that would be a moral fact. So how would you address the supervenience problem?
So you have two, it's not a term I'm familiar with.
Yeah.
So you have two identical worlds.
Mm-hmm.
So just like, say we just made a carbon copy of Earth, let's say.
Yep.
And they're sitting side by side.
Correct.
So now I've got these two worlds. So lay it out again, just so I have a clear understanding.
So you have one world that committing atrocities, causing harm to others, affecting well-being would be wrong. But then you have another world side by side that you can do that. Do you see how the point is that in all the things that are part of the one world are also alike in all moral respects. So if nature decides morality, you would have to be the same with all moral, because it would just be the same thing. Like nature and morality are the same thing. So they would be alike in all respects. So you would have one world where you would have goodness and then one world badness, but they would both be moral facts. So it could, yeah. Do you see the paradox there, or the dilemma there?
Yep. And so I think it may be a gross oversimplification to say nature defines morality. I mean, we exist in nature.
Thank
right?
you.
So I think it might be a little bit of an oversimplification or generalization, but we can look at both of those. So maybe it's worthwhile. Could you tell me how you would define well-being?
I would say that's a good question. I would say, but I would have to come from the virtue ethics point of view, which would be to love your neighbor as you would love yourself. So it would be to preserve the best possible outcome of their well-being. Like for instance, like if someone needed even a coat off your back, like that would be something that you would do necessarily for someone else. Like something. I mean, if you want to go to other type of hypotheticals too, that's fine.
I think we can. In fact, I'll take your definition, and we can even shorten it before your explanation and say looking out for the best possible outcome. Okay.
Yes, exactly.
Let's say other people. I've also heard well-being defined as like a balance between physical and mental health, things like that. But for a second, we'll go with yours. Okay.
Yeah.
So looking for the best possible outcome. With that definition, we apply well-being. We can apply well-being to both those identical planets, and we can use that as an objective standard and say, because you had the one planet where everything's going well, right? Yeah. And then you had the other planet where everything's just going not well. Right. We can apply the well-being standard, looking for the best possible outcome, to those people on the planet where all the bad stuff's happening. And we can objectively say that the best possible outcome for someone is not for someone to just arbitrarily drive down the street, mount up on the curb, and run them over with their car. right? That
Correct. Yeah.
that's an obvious bad outcome that's going to negatively affect their well-being. Okay.
Yes.
On the other planet, you have the person who stops their car at the side of the road, gets out, and helps the person on the sidewalk carry their groceries to their car because they're using crutches or they're seniors or something like that.
Yeah.
Looking out for the best possible outcome for them. So I'm using the same standard of well-being, and I can put it on both worlds, and I can objectively identify why one is bad because it's not affecting their best possible outcome, because running that person over is not cool, versus helping them to the car with their groceries. So it seems to me that I've just solved your problem of well-being with these two separate worlds.
Yes,
Using
but see,
your definition.
right, but you're still assuming my position that of my ontological viewpoint that Jesus would have to be the basis of that ontology, though. It couldn't be anything natural.
Why not?
Because it's paradoxical. Because if you have a world does not have that well-being established in that natural realm, then it's a moral fact that well-being would be false.
But you're simply stating it can't be in a natural realm. Can you please show me how it can't be in a natural realm?
Well, I mean, the paradox itself, it delineates that.
Because I address those two examples. And even when I use your definition of looking for the best possible outcome, right? If I'm looking for the best possible outcome on an exam, the best way I can assure the best possible outcome for myself is to study and prepare for that exam. Right?
Okay.
And I can apply best possible outcome to any scenario you want to give me. And I don't need anything supernatural to see what is the best possible outcome and what is clearly not the best possible outcome. Helping the person to the car, good. Running them over, bad.
Yes, but then again, the normativity objection and also David Hume's other objection that I brought up as well with Hume's guillotine shows that you can't appeal to natural causes to account for that.
Why?
So I can go through. So the normativity objection shows that moral and natural facts are just too different to be identical. Again, that's why I brought up, can we get a cup of morality? Can you fry some morality on some grill and put on some buns?
No, but like I said, we can identify morality, and in your example of two worlds, we can clearly see, we can objectively see one better moral outcome versus one worse moral outcome. So while you can't have a cup of it, you can have an example in a box of it, like we just stated.
Right, but you can't discover morals through empirical investigation or through our stimuli. Our stimuli is not tantamount to morals. That's just stimuli.
Sure.
So,
but we interpret the world,
here.
right? But we interpret the world through our senses. When you see that, so just go. I don't want to belabor this, and then we're totally fine to move on because I don't want to beat this horse totally dead. We interpret the world through our senses. If you look at world one, where everything's cool, and you see the person help the person to their car with their groceries, right? You interpret that through your senses, and you can see, you can absolutely identify that that's good, especially when you have a comparison of the other world where the dude mounts the curb and runs her over. And through your senses, you can interpret and then look at well-being and say, if I look at this individual's well-being, one, my observation of them being helped to their car is good, and my observation of them being run over is bad.
Well, that's see, here's the problem, though. That flies in the face of evolution. Do you think a lion would be obligated to not kill a deer when it's hungry? I mean, that's just. Or how about a spider when it eats its mate? Like when it's after it mates.
Messed up, man.
I've seen that.
Cool.
See, that's the problem. You can't use evolutionary ethics to account for well-being. I think well-being is actually a Christian. I think that it's inherently Christian, and that's what I'm arguing today through Christian virtue ethics. I think it all aligns better. Yeah,
and I get that, but I think it might not be fair if you're or not asking me. I offered it. If I offered to take your position that the Bible is true and the God is real and all that other stuff, then it might not be fair for you to ask a question regarding other animals that you don't believe are moral agents or have souls or matter that much as we do anyway. So that might not be a fair comparison for you to like. I mean, spiders eating other spiders, that's messed up, man. I hope my wife never tries to eat me. And is a lion immoral for eating the gazelle? No,
right.
I don't think so. They can't go to Burger King like we can, right?
Right.
So it might not be fair for you to kind of do that switch. And I'm not. That may come across harsh. I didn't mean. I don't mean to say that it's a dishonest tactic. I don't think you're deliberately being dishonest about it. But but if I'm prepared to kind of make these kind of concessions, then because you don't think that it's a moral question when a lion eats a gazelle, right?
No,
so it's like you're trying to switch it around and put me in a position. And I heard you mention before how Tom Jump argued this point, and I think it's a weird question, man. Like, is a lion immoral for eating a gazelle? I don't know. Probably not. Like I said, he can't go to Burger King.
Right. I think the point. Did you have to say something, SFT?
I was just going to say, if you wanted to kind of tie this up, when we can move on to something else, just so we're not kind of just getting, so we can get to other issues, if you want.
Yeah, I think you addressed probably some of my biggest issues I have against the secular viewpoint, but I just want to say something really quick. So, would you say the cosmos is like embedded with morality? Like, would you say like space, time, and matter? Would you say that those are inanimate? They don't have the properties of morality? Would you agree to that?
Cosmos. Well. Are you excluding us from that? Because we're in the cosmos and we do.
No, I'm just saying, like,
you just mean in general.
Excluding
does Saturn have morality?
Exactly.
I would say I would say the universe, even break it down to a lower common denominator, Earth. I would say our planet is completely amoral. I don't think our planet, if our planet did care about anything, it probably wouldn't want us here.
Exactly. So there's nothing. That's why Richard Dawkins says that there's nothing inherently moral. I mean, or he says, like, these cosmos and all this and that there's nothing compelling us to.
There's nothing inherently moral about amoral agents. Sure.
Yeah, like
it would be weird for you to expect there to be something moral about an amoral agent. Like, if we expected Earth to be moral, that's weird.
Right. So I think that would actually be a kind of a fallacy anyway, where you attribute like things that are conceptual or things that are like descriptive, and you apply anthropomorphic type of titles to them. I'm not sure. I think that is the reification fallacy. I think it's probably around there somewhere, but
maybe. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
So you were gonna ask me something else.
Yeah, but don't you think it's kind of interesting that humans are the ones that really, I would say, represent morality? Because animals, like we just mentioned, they're probably not the best representatives of morality. It's really humans. And doesn't that suit really the Christian worldview better than a secular worldview? I'm just saying, like, if you don't want to address it, that's fine too. That's my only question to you with that. Sure.
Have you ever watched other apes interact with each other?
Yes.
Right. You can just look up on YouTube chimpanzee society, right? And this is clearly laid out. Jane Goodall did it with other gorillas, other apes, and I say other apes because we're apes. That's another discussion, but whatever. It's other ape societies. It's really well documented. They don't put up with theft or or unwanted sexual contact. They will expel members of their own little societies for doing things like that. So I mean, that's just this is going to come across wrong, but I feel bad for you pulling out something that I can just so easily say, yeah, it's completely not the case. Like it's just so easily demonstrated. Now, do we see that with sharks? No, but we see it even with crocodilians, right? Mother crocodiles carry the babies around their mouth. Go try messing with a baby crocodile. You'll come back with less appendages. And they protect from other animals and from other crocodilians because the males can be cannibalistic against their young. So we do see this in other places throughout the animal kingdom. And there are places we absolutely don't see it. I keep snakes. I have pythons, and when a female lays a clutch of eggs, she wraps her body around it and twitches because she's cold-blooded to create friction and incubate the clutch. Try taking the eggs away. Mama don't like. But once those eggs hatch, Mama don't care. Yeah. They just go off and do their own thing. So we see these varying degrees throughout the animal kingdom.
Actually, that's interesting. You mentioned apes and the I think they were called? Yeah, what's the total overarching? I think they call them monkey. Yeah, monkeys. So here's what Sam Harris says about that. There's nothing more natural than rape. Human beings rape, chimpanzees rape, orangutans rape. Rape clearly is part of the evolutionary strategy to get your genes into the next generation. So, I mean, if Sam Harris, I think he's a well-established secular atheist. He's a psychologist too. I think
he's a neuroscientist.
Or neuroscientist, yeah. So that quite isn't right. So, I mean, the monkeys, they do rape each other, and it's to get their genes to the next generation, according to Sam Harris, and that is the morality of it all.
Sure, yeah. And so that statement, right? There's nothing wrong with rape. I would completely disagree with that because it goes against that animal's well-being, right? It's just as wrong for another monkey or a gorilla or an orangutan, any one of the ape species, just like us, to rape another because it goes against their well-being. I would completely disagree with that. Now, there might be an evolutionary advantage to it, but that doesn't make it right.
Exactly.
I would still not do it. So I would completely disagree with Sam Harris. And I'd say that to his face.
Yeah, I would really appreciate. I mean, that is well appreciative. People to do that, to stand against even their own ilk. Their own people that they like their own type of belief system. But do you see the predicament though? Like you can't appeal to the nature to account for morals, and I'm thinking that's the Hume's guillotine problem, Hume's Izod problem, also the supervenience problem. I think those solidify why we have to go outside nature to account for morality and appeal to that. And I mean, we can talk about gods and religions and, even other things out there like spiritual things like Hinduism. And I mean, they're not all, you don't need, I'm going to say this, that I would appeal to the Christian God, but you don't need necessarily a Christian God to account for that. You just can't appeal to nature. I think that's what I'm driving at,
I'd push back on that because you do believe you need the Christian God for it.
I do, yes. Yeah. But ontologically, you do not. so I have to be honest there. I can't say, well, you must, like it's like a necessary fact, because then it's almost like the tag argument, like with the laws of logic, that you can get to deism or type of theism, but you can't prove it's the Christian God, which I can make arguments for the Christian God there, but you can't definitively prove it. I think that's my point, is that we can eliminate or dismiss any naturalistic framework, but that doesn't mean it's only the Christian viewpoint either. So I don't want to be like too fundamental with all this either.
No, I get it. I get it. Yeah, that's probably fair. And I'm not a huge fan of tag either. I think it's a really bad argument. But it's interesting because you said that, like, you have restated that we can't use natural. And I
Yes.
don't want to go back to this, but the audience can be the judge, and they'll judge me harshly, of course, given where I am, which is fine. But with the two worlds, I think I really clearly showed how you don't need, like, you can absolutely appeal to nature, and it doesn't, and the way I laid it out, it's not fallacious in any way, shape, or form. But I don't want to drag us back to something else. Ask me something else.
Yeah. So for moral responsibility, so in philosophy, that there's something called the epistemic conditions for moral responsibility. And you have to be an autonomous agent that has a type of free will. I think you can maybe use compatibilism, maybe, but I have some things that I would push back with that. But you need to have some type of autonomy, free will, and mental control. Now, as a hard determinist, that becomes a problem, because if you're an automaton of the universe, then you don't have control of yourself. You don't have control of your thoughts. It's something else external controlling your thoughts and your beliefs. So would you like to address that?
Yeah, it's interesting. I guess the first thing I'd want to do is ask you a question. And that question would be, are you, it's hard. Someone saying they're Christians is a lot of times like saying I drive a car, because like you likely don't think Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses are Christians, but ask them and they'll tell you they are Christian. So I guess I need a couple of clarifying questions before I can kind of wind it up. So you identify as a Christian. Are you, like, what flavor do you subscribe to?
I do not subscribe to any denomination. I think denominations are, except I like the Baptists. I can't rat on all of them. I'll say, if anything, I would probably lean to the Baptist persuasion.
Okay. Would you say that you're a fundamentalist?
Fundamental as in the Word of God, yes. Not fundamental as in like the Westboro Baptist Church fundamental.
Okay. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. But not like not like an NIFB.
No.
Okay. Goody, we can keep talking. So, all right. Are you a presuppositionalist?
Yes. So that's one of those things that I understand that the secular side probably wouldn't respect too much because of Darth. I think Darth maybe No, I love Darth. I can't
Stop swearing on Standing's channel. Yeah, I have no love for that individual. Okay, all right. So can anything happen that's not God's will?
Yes. There's different wills. There's the creative will, prescriptive will, and the
Permissive?
Permissive will, yeah. So he can permit things that are not part of his will, yes.
Okay. All right. So I think given that, so I agree with you in that if you're just an automaton, like a mindless constructed being,
right?
Then I agree with what you're saying. We're not. We are autonomous, obviously. I like what I like what Christopher Hitchens said about free will. He said, I say we have free will, and when I'm asked why, I say it's because I don't think we have any choice.
Yeah.
I've always found that very tongue in cheek, comical. But so I think that you're correct in that, we have to be autonomous beings, being able to make choices and make choices freely. There's interesting arguments for free will. You brought up Sam Harris, and there are I'm not sure whether that's called a PET scan or something, where they can actually hook up to your brain, and there are decisions that we make that we actually make before we're conscious of them.
Yes.
So some people argue we don't have free will. I mostly don't care. I can decide whether to have a steak or a sandwich, and that's enough for me. It's not a huge question for me. So I think I lost your question and all of that minutia. So I don't have a problem with free agency. I don't have a problem with autonomous beings and all those other things. But if anything, I would argue that more solidifies the ability to apply the objective standard of well-being to any situation over. Oh, the other question is, are you a divine command theorist?
No, I'm not a divine command theorist. Okay. I believe there's a way that you don't have to appeal. Just because God commands it doesn't make it true. It's the Euthyphro dilemma, obviously.
Sure, that's an interesting question, though. So if you don't mind me asking you,
sure.
Which is it?
I would, go ahead.
Of the Euthyphro, which is it?
I would say neither. I'd say that I think it's contingent upon God's nature, that the nature of God shows why something is immoral or something that is wrong or something that I think it would go against God's nature if for morality is based on God's nature. So if you do something immoral, then you are infracting on his nature, I would say.
Right. And so morality, what God says, because
would be based on his nature. It wouldn't be based because he says something. Just because he says something doesn't make it true. But I mean, I think these also compose of moral virtues, and they're good because he has them. He's composed, or he embodies moral virtues, and so that's how we can, instead of appealing to God's like commands or the moral itself, I think we can just his virtues, since he has them, they are moral. So I think that's a good way to explain it too.
So it's a little sneaky. But I get it. It's not. It's sticky, right? Like the reality is. The reality is, I mean, morality is one of my favorite topics to discuss because
me too.
It's not. It's not, and I'll argue this with people all the time. It's not black and white. It's not just this is this because. I've had those discussions, and I've asked the question like, why? And it's like, well, because he says so. And one of the things I've referenced in the past is, well, I remember when my parents told me that as a kid, I want this. You can't have it. Why? Because I said so. Right. And everybody watching, standing, you, me, and everybody in the side chat all remembers how super frustrating that was. And completely unsatisfying in every way, shape, and form. So it's like, I get that it's a sticky problem, but I think it's a valid question, because if you say that, that God says it because it's right, then it can't come from him. And the alternative is, it doesn't matter what he says, it is right. Why? Why? Because it's his nature. So that's where, to go back to something you said before. That's right. And I wrote it down, where it says, if God doesn't exist, then everything is permissible. Well, everything is permissible if God says it's right. You can do anything if God says it's right. And if we take that, and if we take a step back, so one of my favorite lovely Bible verses is where it says, and yeah, it's Old Testament, but that's where a lot of the despicable things happen, and it's fun to pick on. So in the Old Testament, where it says, if you, on the night of your marriage, if you find out that your wife is not a virgin, you're to take her to her father's doorstep and kill her. I don't remember the verse, but it's super easy to look up for everybody. And if we apply the everything's permissible, why? Because I said so. But if we take my standard of well-being, we can absolutely say, objectively, that's bad. That's bad for her well-being. She is not, and even by your definition, she's not getting the best possible outcome by being dead.
Okay, yeah, so I'd like to respond to that. So
sure, yeah, and take your time, because I took a lot of time with that.
Oh yeah, no, this is I love this good dialogue. So, well, first of all, the dynamics of the Torah. There's different dynamics. So one of them is we have laws, statutes, and we have ordinances. So the ordinances were things like blood, atonement, sacrificial type of things that God has instituted to it's like a foreshadowing of the New Testament that Jesus would take on himself and would end all those things. So we didn't have to do blood atonement, but they did have atonement back then. Leviticus 16 says that they had that available. So it's when you read something like with these punishments of the laws, they're descriptive. They're not prescriptive in any way. And if you get into like law, like I know Dr. Josh Bowen, and we get into these type of discussions with what's legislative. These are not legislative in any way. I mean, these, if you look at these, the theme of the Pentateuch is that this is casuistic law. So they can do that, but it's not like God says it's 100%. You must do this or else. It's not like one of those what we call apodictic laws, like the 10 Commandments. Like you ought to do these things. So there's no oughts in these punishments. It's just descriptive. That's all.
Oh, okay. So how about Leviticus 20:13? The man lays with the man as he does a
Same
woman,
thing.
he's committed an abomination. No.
Yeah.
And they shall be put to death. Their blood will be upon them. That's prescriptive. That's not telling you what to do.
No, that's not, because again, it's casuistic law. These are in the form of I'm trying to think. It's apodictic, and then there's I forget the other one right now. But no, it's not. There's nothing in fact, I can if you want to have another discussion on this, I'd love to. That the universal agreement upon all ancient Near East scholars is that basically the whole entire Pentateuch itself is not legislative in any fashion, form, or way. So
other than the 10 Commandments.
Other than the 10 Commandments, exactly. So
I've not heard. Well, first of all, let me first say I'm glad you don't want to kill gay people. That's a good thing. That's looking out for their well-being. That's looking out for the best possible outcome for them. Good.
Right. But yeah.
So what about God turning Lot's wife into a pillar of salt? That was a direct action by him.
Yes.
How does that address her well-being?
Well, we have a holy, just, and righteous God too. Oops, hold on. Someone's trying to call me here. There we go. So
let it be shown that Praise's phone went off first.
Right in the middle of the debate, man. I hate that.
Actually, Praise, before you continue, just because the discussion has been so cordial, engaging, and professional, so I want to say good job to the both of you. We've had a great chat. We've had up to 60 people
really
in chat. I don't want to just stop you guys in mid thought or mid sentence, but maybe we should start winding it down for some with some final points, and then we can get into 20 minutes of questions, since we're going on an hour and a half.
Yeah, and I'm totally good for round two. I'm totally good for round two whenever.
Likewise, I really enjoy this.
Okay, why don't we do this then? And definitely a round two, because this was an awesome debate, and I know you guys could probably talk about these topics for the next 20 hours. So,
Why
yeah.
don't you wrap? So Stadium's going to totally take over your channel. Why don't you I'll let you have the last question to me if you want, and then we can go into questions from the audience.
let's do it. Perfect. Go ahead, Praise. So, Praise, if you want to ask him one last question, we'll allow Michael to answer, and then you guys can take 2 minutes to kind of wrap up your thoughts in the form of a concluding statement. Then, bam, we'll get into some questions.
So I guess my last question, do you think morals assume like a teleology, like there's a purpose and there's some type of scheme for them? Like without teleology, like morals make no sense. They're just there. Like it's a brute fact. Would you agree with that?
No, because so teleology, if I'm not mistaken, speaks to like purpose.
Yeah, there's a purpose. There's a reason why it's driving to it like a terminus. There's a definite end to it. It all is driving to something. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I think I laid that out fairly well. If we apply well-being to any scenario, and we should have done this more. I should have let you ask me more questions on scenarios. But if we apply the standard of well-being, the objective standard of well-being to any scenario, then it does have a purpose. And the purpose is to use your definition, the best possible outcome.
Sure.
If we use my definition, then it's promoting flourishing, reducing harm, things like that. So it does have a purpose. And where did it come from? I think it's pretty obvious that it came from us. It does, even if we allow for the discussion and the assumption that this God exists. Outside of that, it begs the question that the God has to, because if you're going to say it's got to come from somewhere, if you say it's got to come from somewhere, then naturally it's got to come from somewhere and because the universe, like we talked about, is amoral, that means it has to come from someone. Now you get a being involved, and then you trip down the trail and eventually say, yeah, it's Jesus, and you better, atone.
Yeah. Well, also say there's inherent value that every person has, and when you have teleology, it works best, I feel. So I guess I'll even give you that you can have some type of teleological scheme, but I think the Christian virtue ethics is the best scheme. It's the most robust scheme because we have inherent value. We're the image. It's called the Imago Dei. We're image bearers of God. Therefore, we automatically have a purpose and a goal to our life. And I would just say, sure, I'll give you that, but I say mine is superior to yours, so maybe you should adopt that. I guess I'll just put it that way.
Okay, one last little tidbit in there. Okay, should gay couples be allowed to marry?
They should be allowed, but not necessarily in the church. I disagree with the church.
Oh, I don't think a church should be forced to marry someone that they disagree with, if they disagree with their stance. But
yeah.
but should a same-sex couple have the same rights as a heterosexual couple?
Yes, they should.
Wow, I'm glad and excited to hear you say that.
Okay, well, why don't we wrap it up there, gentlemen? Great debate, great discussion.
You're going to catch a lot of crap from some Christians over saying that, by the way.
I could care less, really.
Okay, so let's do this. Let's hand it to Michael because he started. Michael, take 2 minutes, a minute, whatever you need to kind of give your concluding thoughts, or maybe touch on something you feel was left hanging. I always like to do that before we proceed right into the audience Q&A. Then we'll do the same for praise, and we'll get into some audience questions. So, Michael, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not going to take long. Like I said previously, if I haven't made my point by now, I don't think I can. But what I would say is just break it down to the lowest common denominator. I know that I'm poking a lot of you in the eye by saying this stuff, and it's not necessarily intentional, but you can get there. And you'll say, break it down to the lowest common denominator. You can get there, and you don't need a God to do it. That's enough.
Okay. Short and sweet. I like it, Michael. We will hand it over to Praise. Praise, go ahead. Some concluding thoughts, concluding words.
Awesome, man. So in my concluding remark, I want to say I appreciate Michael. He was a great interlocutor, better than most, probably 95% of the other interlocutors that I've had conversations with. So I really respect him and really enjoyed that. But I think Michael made some good points, but I do feel like the natural materialist, physicalist viewpoint is lacking, and I think I show good points for that. The audience can decide. You can't derive morality from something that's it's amoral, like the cosmos, evolution. I mean, everything else that's physical. Chemistry. We wouldn't say chemistry has any type of moral value. So I think I demonstrate. I gave some good options for Christians to look at: Christian virtue ethics, and when you do a comparison, side by side comparison, I do think the Christian worldview wins out as far as explanatory power and abductively the inference to the best explanation. So I'm not saying this is a 100% knock out of the park proof that the Christian worldview or the Christian the moral standard is the true one, but I think it does win out when you compare them side by side. And we can compare other worldviews too, but that's a whole other discussion. But I'll yield there, and I really enjoyed this.
All right. Well, thank you to both Michael and Praise for the debate, for the concluding statements. Definitely one to remember. I appreciate the cordial and professional attitude as well. So that being said, let's as we did in the last debate, Michael, that we had you on here with CJ. What we're going to do is I'm going to put a timer of 20 minutes for these questions. We'll see how many we can get through. There are quite a bit here. And I think every question's for you. I'm looking through them. If anybody has like a random question for Praise in the chat, if I see that pop up, we'll definitely take priority there. But what we'll do is we'll have Michael answer the question. If the question's for him, we'll allow Praise to have a couple thoughts. But then because it's Michael's question, he gets the last word if he wants. All righty. So first question.
Actually, Stanley, can I start off? I have a question for Praise.
Sure.
Pineapple on pizza, yes or no?
Yes.
Yeah, for me.
All right.
Love it.
Are we all in agreement on pineapple on pizza?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so here we go. That's a good note to start these questions on. I got to thank Ramen is the super sticker master for this afternoon. I appreciate all the support. Pertaining to the super chats as well. So first question comes in from 2 John 9-11 KJV. I appreciate the question. Question is for Michael. Michael, what is the appeal to authority according to you?
If I'm going to assume he means the appeal to authority fallacy. And if you're talking about the appeal to, and I apologize if that's not what it means, please clarify and I'll readdress it. But an appeal to authority fallacy is when you appeal to someone about something to which they are not an authority. For example, like I mentioned earlier, if I cited Richard Dawkins on cosmology, that would be an appeal to authority fallacy. If I cited Lawrence Krauss on cosmology, that is not an appeal to authority fallacy because he's an expert in that.
Okay, I appreciate the question and the response. Michael, Praise, if you had a couple points you wanted to make, go ahead.
I'm good. That was fine with me.
All right, awesome. So here's a question for both, actually. So I'm going to go right to this one. Question from Gavin Hurleyman. So question for both. What stops atheism from devolving into moral non-cognitivism?
Oh, Michael, if you want to address that, either me or it's fine.
Right. So I think you asked me this, and I think I addressed it. So atheism in and of itself, nothing. Atheism is an answer, like I said, to a single question. Do I think there's a God? And like I said, everything else is something else. When you get into when you start to branch into morality, you're talking about different things. So I see this a lot, and I don't want to slough off the question, but I do think it deserves a somewhat terse response, in that that's not a question that you answer with atheism, because atheism is just about whether you believe there's a God or gods.
So yeah, I'd like to respond to that. So the problem is that the non-theistic worldview, or whatever you want to call it, secular, if that's fine too, they can believe, they can have moral beliefs, but they can never have moral knowledge. We know that murder is wrong in our scheme. And this is the problem that's been posed among philosophers as moral non-cognitivism, is there are no moral truths or falsities without a God, without a moral agent that has a nature, if you want to call it a perfect moral nature to appeal to. So, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you to the both of you. That was a question for both, and you both got the chance to answer. So I appreciate that. Let's get right into the next question here. Question from Adrian Deku. Question, it's not specified, but it looks like it's to you, Michael. So question is, I'll just read it word for word. He says, everyone knows that matter is built from subatomic particles. We all know them. Please explain how the particles are arranging themselves into our bodies. Thank you.
That's a question for someone with a lot more letters after their name than me.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna pretend to know answers to things I don't know.
No problem. No problem. Let's just go right to the next question here. This one is, I got some super chats with questions, so let's get to these ones. Smoky Saint, who I think you've debated as well, Michael, your good buddy Smoky Saint, gives a $10 super chat. I appreciate it. Question for Michael. The ancient Jews were stopping neighboring nations from abusing their slaves and murdering their children. Why do you condemn those that would stop them? What would you have done with them?
I think what he's referring to are some of the stories, like maybe the Canaanites and the Midianites and things like that, where the Hebrews would go in and basically there's a bunch of slaughters that are talked about in the Bible, and then they would I hope that's what he's referring to, because I don't want to not answer his question, but I think that's what he's referring to. So those actions in and of themselves, and this is where morality gets sticky, because yes, if there was a culture that was slicing kids in half and sacrificing them to Molech or whatever the god of the month was, that's horrible, and you do need to go in and address that and stop that from happening. And might there have to be some people that, like, if they go to war, will some people be killed? Yeah, I guess so. And the hope would be that those kids or the women or whoever else was left over would be taken care of. The problem is that in the Bible, it also lays out very specifically that if women, the women who've known a man should also be killed, but the virgins are kept as booty, and plunder and things like that. So that's where I think it starts to get a little bit morally sketchy. So I do think and we could even kind of bring this forward. There are humanitarian efforts now where countries will go into other countries to stop, crimes against humanity. One of the things that I like, and not to get too political about this, but one of the things that I like about this from being a Canadian is that we tend to be more peacekeepers than police. So we'll try to ensure, and I know Standing can feel me on that from a Canadian perspective, where we'll tend to go in and be more, just nobody do anything bad. We don't want to kill a bunch of people perspective. So the short answer is, yeah, you do have to protect. And so I think that that's a good thing. To the extent it goes to in the Bible, maybe not so much.
Okay, well, I appreciate the question and super chat from Smokey, as well as the response.
Can I respond that really quick?
Praise, yes, of course. I was just going to say, go ahead, take your time. If you have
I thought you were going to.
No worries. I know you definitely want to respond. Go ahead.
So yes, a lot of people, I think, are I hate to say this, but I think they are lacking knowledge about the nature of the ancient Near East. But I have a verse I think epitomizes what's the ancient Near East was, what Israel was put up against in their everyday life style. So here it is, Exodus 15:9. The enemy boasted, I will pursue, I will overtake them, I will divide the spoils, I will gorge myself on them, I will draw my sword and my hand will destroy them. So it was a kill or be killed mentality in the ancient Near East. It was a severe type of lifestyle. And I think some people don't understand that, or they are not, or they didn't really learn it. Like I think they need to be introduced to that a little bit more before they make claims about the Bible being so, so severe, whatever the word you want to call it, or volatile or violent. I just think that's just the way it was. Like if Islam came against us today, we would be forced to protect ourselves. So I just think that's the basic underlying meaning of what's going on there. So I'll yield there.
Michael, the question was yours. You can have the last word.
No, we can go on to the next one.
All right. I appreciate it, gentlemen. Okay, so let's see. Next question is from Aaron Moss, $5 super chat. I appreciate the super chat and the support, Aaron. So question is for Michael. When an animal kills, is it immoral? If people are just monkeys, where do they get their standard for morality?
Yeah, I'm not going to belabor this. And I don't mean to slough off the super chat because I know somebody paid to ask the question. But we did talk about this before, and Praise kind of suggested this. And, for the purposes of the discussion, like, yes, we are apes, we're monkeys. This is demonstrably so. But it's more than that. And I think that if we're going to, for the purposes of the discussion, assume that the God is real and things like that, then we also have to understand that there are differences to different degrees within the animal kingdom.
All right. Well, I appreciate the super chat and the answer, Michael. Praise. Did you have a couple points you wanted to make before we move on?
Yeah, I'd just like to just restate what I brought up early in the debate. The is-ought problem, I think, is a huge problem for evolutionary ethics. Also, Hume's ratchet, the normative, the normative objection, and I'll just leave it there.
All right. Well, thank you, Praise. Thank you, Michael. Okay, so next question comes from Ramen, $5 super chat. I appreciate the super chat and the super stickers, Ramen. Praise, this one looks like it's for you. So Ramen asks, Praise, when Steve was 6 years old, his little sister Sarah was half his age. If Steve is 40 years old today, how old is Sarah?
Don't do the math.
Pull out your calculator.
Man, come on, like 36 probably. Yeah, my brain is too scrambled right now to really go through that.
Praise, you're fired from ever being allowed to debate on this channel again. I'm just kidding.
I skipped that day of school, so don't ask me.
No worries. Thanks for the support, Ramen. Thanks for the response, Praise. And okay, so question here from Jesus is Lord. Thank you so much, Jill, for your question. Question for the secularist. So I assume that's you, Michael. When does your morality say it's acceptable to kill a healthy unborn human of 3 months? I will say this, Michael, there's a few questions related to kind of this abortion topic.
Yeah, no worries. I feel like that could be a discussion in and of itself, but I'm happy to field it.
Yeah.
Right, that's what I was going to say. So we'll just fuse them all into that one, and you can have your chance to kind of give your thoughts on that, Michael.
Okay, so in regards to abortion, this is something that Praise brought up in the difference between autonomy, and I. So this will trigger every single solitary person in the chat. I am pro-life. I believe life is precious and should be protected. My pro-life stance is only overtaken by my pro-choice stance. And that is that autonomous life has to take precedent. I think that one day we may get to a point where we can actually transplant, if that's the right word, embryos from people who are pregnant but do not want to carry them. We're not there yet. that would be my preference to try to preserve life. However, for me, I'm a guy, so I don't get to make the choice. Two, bodily autonomy, in my opinion, must win out. And I think the specific question was, what's the barrier? And the barrier for me is when that embryo, fetus, whatever it is, has the capacity to survive autonomously outside of the mother's body, when it no longer is required for the mother's body to care for it. And when it reaches that point, then I think it becomes incumbent upon society to protect that life.
All right, I appreciate that response, Michael. Praise, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, some short. It's this that I just refer back to teleology, that we have an inherent value and purpose, and then a definite terminus in our life, and that's why I think that babies are the image bearers of God. So they have inherent value, and secularists cannot claim that. And I think maybe if they did, maybe if they put more value on babies, then we would have less abortions happening. So I'll just leave it there.
All right, I appreciate that, Praise. Did you want a final word on that, Michael, or move on to the next?
The last thing I'd say is I think less abortion is preferable, but it can't come at the cost of bodily autonomy.
All right, well, I appreciate it, gentlemen. Next question comes in from Redefine Living. Question is for you, Michael, and thanks for the question, RL. He says, Michael is suggesting God is bad, but what standard is he using?
I don't know how many different times I can say well-being. I feel like I have beat this to death. And yeah, just to kind of slough off any misconceptions. The God of the Bible is an immoral monster and is morally beneath me.
All right, and Praise, if you wanted to add anything, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I completely fit the question. Can you repeat that again?
It was from Redefine Living. He said, Michael is suggesting God is bad. What standard is he using? And I know you guys kind of discussed that a little bit too.
Yeah, this to put God on trial, you would need to assume God in the first place, because you have no moral, I think, epistemological warrant to impugn the God of the Bible. So it's kind of a it's like a paradoxical type of situation for the atheist, or the one that doesn't believe in God.
All right, thank you, Praise. Michael, as always, what we do here, you can have the last word if you'd like.
No, I think we're good. I think I wiped away any ambiguity in what I said.
Okay, well, I appreciate it. And what we're going to do, we're coming close to the 2-hour mark. I'm going to end it with this. This is a super chat from Alec Cox, $20 super chat. I appreciate the support there, brother Alec. This is more of a statement, Michael, and Praise, but will allow you guys to give your thoughts on it. So I've got it right here. Alec Cox says, laws come from God. Case in point, even pagans had laws that they say they got from their gods that were stolen from God. See Cyrus for answers. If you guys wanted to comment on that, go ahead.
Not to be too argumentative, but cool assertion, bro. Yeah, your God doesn't exist. So, but that's another discussion.
Ooh, Alec versus Michael one day.
Oh,
Clash of the Titans. So Praise, yeah. If you had some thoughts, go ahead.
I think it's a naturalistic intuition to believe that laws come from lawgivers. That's just like the structure of our society, that we have humans that institute laws, and so that we have minds, conscious minds, agents behind laws. So we would say that moral laws require a moral lawgiver, and obviously God, I feel, fits the best criteria core, the moral lawgiver. We can debate on that later, though, if you guys want to.
All right, awesome. Well, I'm sure there's going to be a round 2. This 2 hours flew by. Looks like there's an open mic after show right after the debate. Come share your thoughts. There's the link, Smoky Saints channel. So it looks like the debate and discussion continues over there. One final super sticker from Ramen. I appreciate it. I appreciate both of your time, Michael and Praise. I want to give you guys the floor for just some final words, final thoughts. If you want to plug your channels or your podcast, Michael, of course, you can do so now. So thanks again for giving us your time.
Yeah, Praise, I'll let you have the last word. All I would say is if there were questions that were to be addressed to me, anyone listening to this has an open invitation to come on the podcast. You can send the email to theca@rogers.com. Maybe Standing, if you wouldn't mind just tossing that into the chat.
Sure, yeah. Just
like it sounds. And I'd welcome the discussion. And if you don't want to discuss it, you can ask me the question in the email, and we can have an email back and forth. I don't want anybody to feel like, yeah, it's a finite amount of time, right? 2 hours is a long time. So, but I don't want to feel like there were questions that didn't get answered. I'm always willing to have discussions. I want to thank Standing and Praise for having the discussion. I felt it was really good. I felt it was really fair, and it's been very enjoyable. This has been the second time that I've been on now, and who knows? Even after I say that, the God doesn't exist, I might get an invite back. So this could be good. I'd love to keep the discussions going, and yeah, thank you again, everybody, for tuning in.
My pleasure. My pleasure. We are advocates here of critical thinking and discussing differences, of course, in opinion. So, of course, we are planning to have many more debates, especially on these types of topics. Very important. So thank you, Michael, for those final words. Praise, some final words from yourself.
Oh, man, I totally enjoyed it. I thought Michael was a great interlocutor again, and maybe I kind of just a round 2 discussion with him, maybe on something else. Who knows? I think he's a game opponent. I think he's more sincere than other ones, so I would hope he comes back. But yeah, man, this is a total privilege to be able to have debates like this. I enjoy it. Your show's awesome, SFT, man. Just keep going, and God bless.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Very professional debate. Thanks for keeping it fun, engaging, and some really, really great discussion. So share this debate around. And in the meantime, head on over to the after show to give your thoughts and opinions. So anyways, Standing for Truth is out.